In the early 1900s, seed catalogs across America and the United Kingdom listed over 500 varieties of vegetables available to the average home gardener. 500. And people weren't just buying them, they were growing them, eating them, saving the seeds, and passing them down to the next generation like family heirlooms. Fast forward to today. Walk into any garden center from California to Cornwall, and count how many truly different vegetables you can find. Not different varieties of the same vegetable, genuinely different crops. You'll be lucky to count 30. So what happened to the other 470? Some of them technically still exist, buried in seed bank archives, preserved by a handful of dedicated heirloom growers, quietly maintained by agricultural universities that most people will never visit. But for all practical purposes, for the average gardener in America, the UK, or anywhere across Europe, they might as well have vanished off the face of the earth. And here's what makes this genuinely alarming. It's not just about variety. It's about nutrition. It's about resilience. It's about the fact that many of these forgotten vegetables were hardier, more nutritious, and more productive than the modern hybrids that replaced them. They didn't disappear because something better came along. They disappeared because something more convenient came along. And convenience, it turns out, came at a very serious cost. I've put together a list of 20 forgotten vegetables, crops your grandparents grew without a second thought, that have quietly vanished from modern gardens without warning. Some of them will surprise you. Some of them will make you genuinely angry. And all of them deserve a place back in your garden. So stay with me, because this one goes deeper than you think. Welcome to Evergreen Garden Life. If this is your first time here, please like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment right now telling me what time you're watching this. I read every single one. And make sure you hit that notification bell, so you never miss out on information like this. Because trust me, the things we cover on this channel are the things most gardening channels are simply not talking about. Now before we get into the vegetables themselves, we need to talk about something that most gardening videos completely skip over. We need to talk about why these vegetables disappeared in the first place. Because understanding that story changes everything about how you see your garden today. For most of human history, the kitchen garden was the center of family life. Across rural America, across the British countryside, across farming communities throughout Europe, ordinary families grew an extraordinary range of crops. They weren't doing it to be trendy. They weren't doing it for social media. They were doing it because diversity in the garden meant survival. If one crop failed, 10 others kept the family fed. If one vegetable ran out of season, another one was just coming in. The garden was a carefully balanced, deeply diverse ecosystem that had been refined over centuries of practical experience. Then came industrialization. Then came supermarkets. Then came the idea that food should be uniform, predictable, and shippable across thousands of miles without bruising, rotting, or losing its cosmetic appeal. And almost overnight, the criteria for what counted as a good vegetable changed completely. It was no longer about flavor. It was no longer about nutrition. It was no longer about resilience or productivity in a home garden. It was about shelf life, shipping durability, and visual uniformity on a supermarket shelf. The vegetables that couldn't meet those criteria, the ones with thin skins that bruised easily, the ones with complex flavors that didn't appeal to mass-market tastes, the ones that took a little longer to grow or required a bit more specific conditions, they got quietly pushed aside. Seed companies stopped stocking them. Garden centers stopped selling them. And within a generation or two, most gardeners simply forgot they had ever existed. That is the real story behind the disappearance of these 20 vegetables. And now that you understand it, I want you to hold on to that information as we go through this list, because you're going to see it playing out again and again in the history of every single crop we cover today. Before we get into the list, there is one more thing I need to address, and this is the part that might genuinely shock you. Because it's not just about what was lost in terms of variety. It's about what was lost in terms of nutrition. Here is something the modern food industry would rather you didn't think too hard about. Many of these forgotten vegetables are nutritionally superior to the common crops that replaced them. We are talking about vegetables that deliver vitamins, minerals, and plant compounds at levels that the tomatoes and cucumbers sitting in your refrigerator right now simply cannot match. Jerusalem artichokes, for example, one of the vegetables on our list today, are extraordinarily high in inulin, a prebiotic fiber that directly feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut. A single 100-gram serving delivers nearly 2 grams of protein and provides around 50% of your daily potassium requirement. That's not a supplement. That's a vegetable your great-grandmother likely grew in a corner of her garden without giving it a second thought. Kohlrabi, another crop on today's list, delivers approximately 93% of your daily recommended vitamin C intake in just 1 cup. 1 cup. It also contains powerful phytochemicals that research has linked to protection against certain types of cancer. And yet most people in America and the UK have never tasted it, let alone grown it. Salsify, scorzonera, celeriac. Each of these forgotten root vegetables carries a nutritional profile that would genuinely impress you if you saw it written on the side of a supplement bottle. But because they don't photograph well, because they don't stack neatly on a supermarket shelf, because they require you to actually know what they are before you can buy them, they disappeared from mainstream food culture almost entirely. That changes today. Let's get into the list. Number 1. Salsify. Salsify is often called the oyster plant, and once you taste it, you'll understand why. This long, slender root vegetable has a flavor that is genuinely surprising, mild, slightly sweet, with a subtle earthiness that some people describe as reminiscent of seafood when cooked. It was a staple in Victorian-era gardens across England, and was widely grown throughout colonial America. It thrives in cool weather, grows best in loose, well-drained soil, and is one of the most low-maintenance root vegetables you can possibly cultivate. Harvest it after the first frost for the sweetest flavor, and store the roots in cool, damp sand through winter for a steady supply of fresh produce when almost nothing else is available. The fact that this vegetable has nearly vanished from home gardens is genuinely baffling once you understand how easy and rewarding it is to grow. Number 2. Scorzonera. Scorzonera is salsify's close cousin, and in many ways it is even more impressive. It has a jet black skin on the outside that hides a creamy white interior, and it is particularly popular in traditional European cuisine, especially across France, Germany, and the Netherlands, where it has maintained a quiet but loyal following among serious kitchen gardeners. What makes scorzonera nutritionally remarkable is its high inulin content, the same prebiotic fiber found in Jerusalem artichokes, making it an exceptional crop for anyone interested in supporting gut health naturally through food rather than supplements. It is a perennial in the right conditions, which means once established it can return year after year with very minimal effort on your part. Number 3. Celeriac. Celeriac, also known as celery root, is one of those vegetables that looks intimidating from the outside. All knobby and rough and frankly a little strange, but rewards anyone patient enough to grow it with one of the most versatile and deeply flavored roots in the entire vegetable kingdom. It tastes like a more intense, earthier version of celery, and it works beautifully roasted, mashed, pureed into soups, or eaten raw in slaws and salads. It was once a staple in gourmet kitchens and home gardens throughout Europe and America, and it is now making a quiet comeback in high-end restaurants across London and New York. Growing celeriac requires consistent moisture and a long growing season, but the harvest is absolutely worth the patience. Its low-calorie content combined with its high fiber makes it a genuinely powerful addition to any diet. Number 4. Kohlrabi. Kohlrabi looks like something designed by someone who had never seen a vegetable before. A bulbous, alien-looking stem topped with leafy greens, available in pale green or striking purple. It is a member of the Brassica family, closely related to cabbage and broccoli, and it has a crisp texture and mildly sweet flavor that works equally well raw or cooked. It was widely cultivated throughout the 19th century, particularly in German and Eastern European kitchen gardens, but gradually lost ground to more familiar brassicas as supermarket culture took hold. What makes kohlrabi extraordinary is its nutritional density. That 93% daily vitamin C figure I mentioned earlier is real, and beyond that it contains fiber, potassium, and phytochemicals that actively support immune function, digestive health, and cellular protection. Both the bulb and the leaves are edible, which means you get 2 crops in one plant with zero waste. Number 5. Skirret. Skirret is a vegetable that most gardeners in America and the UK have genuinely never heard of, And that is a tragedy because it was once one of the most widely grown root vegetables in the entire Western world. It produces clusters of sweet, slender white roots with a flavor that is often described as a cross between parsnip and carrot, sweet, earthy, and deeply satisfying. It was a favorite in medieval European gardens, and remained popular well into the 18th century, before gradually fading from cultivation as parsnips and carrots became more commercially dominant. Skirret is a perennial crop, which means you plant it once and it comes back reliably year after year. And it is remarkably tolerant of poor soil conditions that would cause most modern vegetables to struggle. Number 6. Hamburg parsley. Most people know parsley only as a garnish, a sprig of green thrown on a plate for decoration, and then pushed to the side. But Hamburg parsley is something entirely different. Grown for its large, parsnip-like root rather than its leaves, this vegetable was a staple in Central European kitchens for centuries, and was commonly grown in American colonial gardens as a reliable root vegetable, with a unique flavor profile that combines the freshness of parsley with the earthiness of a root crop. The leaves are still perfectly edible and usable as an herb, which means Hamburg parsley is genuinely a two-in-one crop, a root vegetable and a fresh herb from a single plant. It has almost completely disappeared from mainstream seed catalogs in America and the UK, which makes it one of the most urgently worth reviving vegetables on this entire list. Number 7. Orach. Before spinach became the dominant leafy green in gardens across America and Europe, orach was the leafy green that most kitchen gardeners relied on. Also known as mountain spinach, orach comes in striking varieties: deep red, golden yellow, and bright green. And it has a mild, slightly salty flavor that works beautifully in salads, soups, and cooked dishes. What makes orach genuinely superior to modern spinach for home growers is its heat tolerance. Spinach bolts quickly in warm weather, turning bitter and going to seed before you've had a chance to harvest more than a few leaves. Orach handles heat with remarkable ease, which means it continues producing fresh, edible leaves well into the summer months when most spinach has long since given up. It is an easy Direxo crop, it grows quickly, and it adds a visual drama to the garden that most leafy greens simply cannot match. Number 8. Good King Henry. Good King Henry is a name that sounds like it belongs in a fairy tale, and the story of this vegetable is almost as interesting as its name. It is a perennial leafy green that was a staple in cottage gardens across England and throughout Northern Europe for centuries, used as a potherb, meaning a green cooked and eaten like spinach, as well as a salad leaf when young and tender. What makes Good King Henry remarkable for modern gardeners is its absolute resilience. It is drought tolerant, it requires almost no maintenance, it returns reliably every spring once established, and it supports beneficial insects in ways that make it a genuinely valuable companion plant in any productive garden. Before modern spinach hybrids took over, this was the green that ordinary families in the British countryside relied on through the lean weeks of early spring when almost nothing else was ready to harvest. And here is where I need to stop for just a moment and speak to you directly, because if you are watching this video right now and you have not subscribed to this channel yet, I genuinely want you to think about what that means. Every single week we are bringing you exactly this kind of content. Research that goes deeper than the surface. Stories that the mainstream gardening world is not telling. Practical knowledge that can genuinely transform the way you grow food for yourself and your family. And every time you leave without subscribing, you are choosing to miss the next one. You are choosing to stay in the dark when the light is right here. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell. Because the people who do not, they are the ones who will be searching for this information 6 months from now wondering why nobody told them sooner. Number 9. Cardoon. Cardoon is one of the most dramatically beautiful plants you can grow in a kitchen garden. And it is also one of the most criminally underused. A close relative of the artichoke, cardoon produces large, silvery gray architectural leaves on plants that can reach 6 feet tall. And the edible stalks have a unique, slightly bitter flavor that has been treasured in traditional Mediterranean cuisine across Italy, Spain, and southern France for centuries. It was historically blanched, wrapped to exclude light in the weeks before harvest, which sweetens the flavor and transforms the stalks into something truly extraordinary. Cardoon is making a genuine comeback among chefs and serious home growers across Europe and America who are rediscovering traditional flavors, and it is an absolutely striking addition to any productive garden. Number 10. Jerusalem artichoke, also known as sunchokes. Jerusalem artichokes are perhaps the most practically useful vegetable on this entire list, and they are also one of the easiest to grow. They are not related to Jerusalem and they are not artichokes. They are the tubers of a sunflower relative native to North America, and they produce an abundant harvest of knobbly, nutty-flavored tubers that can be eaten raw, roasted, mashed, or pureed into soups. Their nutritional profile is genuinely impressive. Beyond the prebiotic fiber and potassium levels I mentioned earlier, sunchokes are low in calories, have a relatively low glycemic impact compared to potatoes, and support digestive health in ways that modern nutritional research is only beginning to fully document. They grow vigorously, they tolerate poor soil, they require almost no attention once established, and a single planting will produce harvests for years. The only reason most modern gardens don't contain them is simply that most modern gardeners have never been told they exist. Number 11. Chayote. Chayote is a climbing vine that produces pale green, pear-shaped fruits with a mild crisp flavor somewhere between a cucumber and a zucchini. It has been cultivated across Central America and the southern United States for generations, and was once a common sight in kitchen gardens throughout warmer parts of Europe. Every single part of the chayote plant is edible. The fruit, the young shoots, the leaves, and even the starchy root, which makes it one of the most productive and waste-free crops any gardener can grow. It thrives in warm conditions, climbs vigorously on a trellis or fence, and produces abundantly once established. It has quietly faded from mainstream gardening culture in America and the UK without any real justification, and it absolutely deserves a revival. Number 12. Mangelwurzel. Mangelwurzel sounds like the name of a character from a children's story, but its history is anything but lightweight. This giant heirloom beet was a critical food crop across Europe and America for centuries, grown both for human consumption and as winter fodder for livestock. It produces enormous sweet roots with nutritious leafy greens. It stores exceptionally well through winter, and it is one of the hardiest, most low-maintenance root vegetables you can possibly grow. As commercial beet varieties became dominant and livestock farming industrialized, mangelwurzel simply stopped being needed by large-scale agriculture, and it got left behind. But for home gardeners who want a genuinely productive, historically rich, and surprisingly delicious root vegetable, mangelwurzel is one of the most rewarding rediscoveries on this entire list. Number 13. Daikon radish. Daikon radish is a long, white, mild-flavored radish that is central to cuisines across Japan, Korea, and much of Asia, but remains stubbornly underused in home gardens across America and Europe. Unlike the small red radishes most Western gardeners are familiar with, daikon grows into a substantial root, sometimes reaching 18 inches in length, with a gentle, versatile flavor that works raw in salads, pickled, added to soups and stir-fries, or roasted as a side dish. Beyond its culinary value, daikon is extraordinary as a soil-improving crop. Its deep taproot breaks up compacted soil, improves drainage, and adds organic matter as it decomposes, making it genuinely one of the most valuable multi-purpose crops any gardener can add to their rotation. Number 14. Rat-tail radish. The rat-tail radish has one of the least appealing names in the vegetable kingdom, and yet it is one of the most fascinating and productive crops you will ever grow. Unlike conventional radishes which are grown for their roots, the rat-tail radish is grown entirely for its long, crunchy, edible seed pods, which develop after the plant flowers and look remarkably like long, slender tails. The pods have a crisp texture and a peppery radish flavor that is absolutely addictive eaten raw, pickled, or added to stir-fries. They produce prolifically throughout the growing season. They are incredibly easy to grow, and they offer a completely different growing and eating experience from anything else in a typical modern garden. Number 15. Mizuna. Mizuna is a feathery, deeply serrated Japanese mustard green that was once far more common in home gardens across Europe and America than it is today. It has a mild, slightly peppery flavor that works beautifully as a salad green, a cooking green, or a garnish, and it is one of the most cold-hardy leafy greens available to home gardeners, capable of surviving frosts that would devastate most other salad crops. It grows quickly, it can be harvested as a cut-and-come-again crop for weeks on end, and it adds a genuinely beautiful visual texture to any garden bed. Its gradual disappearance from mainstream gardening culture, has no logical explanation beyond the simple fact that it fell out of fashion as a small number of familiar salad greens came to dominate supermarket shelves. Number 16. Tatsoi. Tatsoi is another Asian green that has been quietly overlooked in Western gardening for far too long. It forms beautiful, dark green rosettes of spoon-shaped leaves with a mild, slightly mustardy flavor, and a tender texture that makes it exceptional both raw and lightly cooked. It is extraordinarily cold-hardy, capable of surviving temperatures well below freezing under a light cover, which means it extends your growing season into the depths of autumn, and even early winter in many parts of America and the UK. It grows quickly, it is virtually pest-free compared to many brassicas, and it is one of the most nutritionally dense leafy greens available to the home gardener. Number 17. Croissants, also known as Chinese artichokes. Croissants are tiny spiral-shaped tubers that look almost too beautiful to eat, like small pale, perfectly formed shells, and they have a crisp, nutty, slightly sweet flavor that genuinely has no close comparison in the modern vegetable world. They were popular in French cuisine during the late 19th century, and were grown in kitchen gardens throughout Europe before fading into near-complete obscurity. They are incredibly easy to grow, requiring nothing more than well-drained soil and a sunny spot, and they produce a surprising abundance of tubers from a relatively small planting. Finding croissants in any grocery store today is virtually impossible, which makes growing your own the only realistic way to experience one of the most unique and historically significant vegetables on this entire list. Number 18. Lovage. Lovage is a towering perennial herb and vegetable that was once as common in kitchen gardens as parsley or thyme, and today is almost completely forgotten outside of specialist herb growers. Every part of the lovage plant is edible and intensely flavored. The leaves, the stems, the seeds, and even the roots, with a taste that is often described as a powerful, complex version of celery with hints of anise and pepper. It was used across medieval Europe as both a food crop and a medicinal plant, valued for its digestive properties and its extraordinary flavor. A single lovage plant can grow to 6 feet tall, returns reliably every year as a perennial, requires almost zero maintenance once established, and provides an abundance of fresh, intensely flavored leaves from early spring right through to autumn. Number 19. Oca. Oca is a brightly colored tuber from South America that was cultivated by Andean communities for thousands of years before European contact, and it has been quietly grown in specialist gardens across the UK and Europe for several decades without ever breaking into the mainstream. It produces small, jewel-bright tubers in shades of red, orange, yellow, and pink that have a pleasantly tangy flavor when fresh, caused by their natural oxalic acid content, and a sweeter, more mellow taste after being left in sunlight for a few days after harvest. Oca is incredibly easy to grow in the right conditions, remarkably productive for its size, and visually one of the most stunning crops you can bring into a kitchen garden. It represents an entirely different branch of root vegetable history that most Western gardeners have never had the opportunity to explore. Number 20. Maswa. Maswa closes this list, and it does so in the most fitting way possible, because maswa is perhaps the most thoroughly forgotten vegetable on this entire list, and simultaneously one of the most impressive. Also originating from the Andean highlands of South America, maswa is a climbing nasturtium relative that produces colorful tubers with a sharp, peppery, slightly bitter flavor that mellows dramatically and sweetens considerably when cooked. It is one of the highest-yielding root crops in the world relative to the inputs it requires, growing vigorously in poor soil with minimal water, producing an abundant harvest with virtually no pest or disease pressure. Indigenous Andean communities grew maswa alongside potatoes and oca for centuries as a critical food security crop. Today it exists in barely a handful of specialist seed collections across America and Europe, known only to the most dedicated heritage gardeners. Now here is the part of this video that I want you to sit with for a moment, because this goes beyond your garden. This goes beyond your harvest. This is about something much bigger and much more urgent. Every time a vegetable variety disappears from cultivation, truly disappears, not just from garden centers but from living gardens where seeds are being saved and plants are being grown, something irreplaceable is lost. Not just a flavor, not just a recipe, a genetic blueprint that took thousands of years of cultivation and selection to develop. A blueprint that contains drought tolerance, disease resistance, nutritional compounds, and adaptive traits that no laboratory has yet been able to fully replicate or replace. Growing forgotten vegetables is an act of preservation. Every gardener who plants skirret or scorzonera or maswa this season is keeping a living seed library alive. They are maintaining genetic diversity in a food system that has become dangerously narrow. They are pushing back, quietly and practically, against the industrial standardization of food that has given us a world where 75% of global food diversity has been lost in less than a century. Beyond biodiversity, many of these forgotten vegetables are also among the most sustainable crops you can grow. They require minimal inputs. They thrive without chemical fertilizers. They resist pests and diseases that devastate modern hybrid varieties. They improve the soil rather than depleting it. In a world where gardeners across America, the UK, and Europe are increasingly concerned about the environmental impact of how we grow food, these ancient, resilient, forgotten crops offer something genuinely valuable. They are not just historical curiosities. They are practical solutions to modern problems. And here is where practical action starts. You do not need to grow all 20 of these vegetables to make a difference. Start with 2 or 3 that genuinely interest you. Salsify if you want a root vegetable with a story. Kohlrabi if you want something nutritious and easy. Jerusalem artichokes if you want maximum productivity with minimum effort. Orach if you want a leafy green that actually handles summer heat. The seeds for all of these vegetables are available through specialist heirloom seed suppliers. Companies like Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds in America and the Heritage Seed Library run by Garden Organic in the UK. These are real, established sources with decades of experience preserving exactly the varieties we have been talking about today. Start small. Grow 1 new forgotten vegetable this season. Save the seeds if you can. Grow it again next year. Share the seeds with a neighbor or a friend. That single act, repeated by enough gardeners across enough gardens, is how forgotten vegetables come back. Not through legislation. Not through corporate seed catalogs. Through ordinary people with ordinary gardens, making an extraordinary choice to grow something different. You now have 20 forgotten vegetables, the full story of why they disappeared, the nutritional science behind why they matter, and a practical starting point for bringing them back into your own garden. That is more than most people will learn about this subject in an entire lifetime of casual gardening. And you got it in 20 minutes. But before you go, and I mean this sincerely, I need to ask you something. If you watched this entire video and you still have not subscribed to Evergreen Garden Life, I want you to genuinely ask yourself why. Because everything we just covered together, the history, the nutrition, the forgotten crops, the practical growing knowledge, this is what we do here every single week. The gardeners who subscribe are the ones who will know about the next forgotten crop before it disappears completely. They are the ones who will have the knowledge, the seeds, and the confidence to grow things that most people have never even heard of. We will see you in the next one. And trust me, you do not want to miss it.